You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. Good afternoon. Today's Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. You're listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. This country has many weather hazards which are set up for today and tomorrow. It's difficult to know where to begin because the severe weather risk in terms of what's most dangerous, one could easily say it's in the Kansas City metro area and places near there where there could be, a triple point that sets up really to the west of Kansas City. That's where storm chasers would want to hang out, and that's in between Interstate 35 and Interstate 135 in the Kansas area. That's also where there could be some tornado development. A 5% chance for tornado development within a 25-mile radius tells us the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma. 5% chance when it comes to tornadoes is considered a slight chance, which is a higher level than a marginal chance. But when it comes to other severe weather hazards such as hail and wind, 5% chance is considered marginal. So that's the way it goes because tornadoes are more isolated. We have the St. Louis area is not in the most enhanced risk for severe weather. Kansas City is in an enhanced risk for severe weather that's surrounded by a larger area of a slight risk for severe weather, which is, again, only between about a 15% chance, a 10 to 20% chance for severe weather. But St. Louis does have a 2% chance for seeing tornadoes within a 25-mile radius. Again, Kansas City is a 5% chance of seeing them. The thunderstorm, just regular thunderstorm risk includes, by the way, Denver, Colorado, and that is going to be the next topic of discussion will be Denver. But let's just get into the Midwest, just focus a little bit more on the Kansas City area and portions around there. We have a low pressure system situated over in Kansas that's going to be moving northeast. This low pressure system has a warm front that earlier today was right along the Oklahoma-Kansas border. That warm front will be pushing up north, coming very close to the Chicago area by tomorrow. Now, the problem is we don't really know how far north that warm front is going to make it. That's because thunderstorms are not predictable, but the front is dependent upon thunderstorms. Thunderstorms have something called an outflow. The outflow of thunderstorms produces colder air, and it tends to keep the front from moving north. So really, the storm system itself continues to move northeast. So the warm front should also move northeast. But because of possible thunderstorm development, especially tomorrow morning, that warm front may remain south of the Chicago area. And that's the current thinking. The warm front does move north into the border of Missouri and Iowa, around there into the Illinois area for today. And the main thunderstorm development is going to be focused along that front. In fact, the warm front will be right along the Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas airport, right along there for quite a long period of time. So that's going to be the main focus for thunderstorm development for later on today. And then tomorrow morning, we see those thunderstorms really over in the Chicago area, which could bring a risk for flash flooding, especially by tomorrow afternoon, which will already be another round of thunderstorms. The severe weather risk will likely remain south of the Chicago area for tomorrow. We probably would want to read the hazardous weather outlook for Kansas City from the National Weather Service if we are going to be focused on Kansas City. This hazardous weather outlook is for northwest, north central, and west central Missouri, as well as extreme eastern Kansas. For today and tonight, strong to severe thunderstorms are forecast late this afternoon and will continue through this evening. For days Thursday through Tuesday, additional strong to severe storms are possible Thursday afternoon. So that's not really such a detailed thing over there. Well, if you want to know more information, you can go to the National Weather Service website, or you can go to the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma. The next discussion over here will be the critical fire hazard, which is taking place over in Amarillo, Texas, and surrounding locations, as we have warm temperatures, windy conditions, and very low humidity levels will help contribute to a severe wildfire risk. It's not quite as intense as it was 2 weeks ago, which was a historical event back at the final days of February. But it's pretty close, just the winds were stronger back then. The National Weather Service became aware of how much fuel there is for these fires. They became aware of that during the previous event. Therefore, the messaging is even stronger for this event than it was back then, even though it's not as severe as it was back then. Nonetheless, they are under an extreme fire weather risk for parts of Texas and close to an extreme for other parts of Texas. And there even are some parts of Oklahoma which are included as well. You can look at the Storm Prediction Center webpage in Norman, Oklahoma to see more information regarding that. Now let's get on to probably the most exciting part of this weather for snow lovers. That's happening in the Colorado area. One of the largest metropolitan cities that will be affected by this is Denver, Colorado. And we have something unique. It's unique. Now, the service conditions are not unique, but the National Weather Service tells us that the synoptic weather setup is unique, but nonetheless, it will be producing a classical heavy snow event for March for the Denver area, Boulder, Colorado, and especially areas to the west. When you go west of Interstate 25, north of Interstate 70, really the front hills right around there. When you get into the Colorado Rockies, the Front Range and the foothills around there, Denver is pretty close, especially the western suburbs of Denver, where there could be some very significant snow. Just to talk about this system right now. So in a normal situation, it seems like there's a northeast wind by snowstorms. That's what happens. You have a northeast wind. That produces something called upsloping because those winds bring the moisture up the mountains. And people have seen pictures of this in even a first grade science book where it squeezes the moisture out of those clouds, and then the other side of the mountain is nice and dry. So the only thing is that the mountains are actually facing east. So an ideal situation for upslope winds would actually be an east wind, but the way these storms happen is they bring northeast winds. Well, with this system right now, we actually have an east wind that has developed, and this is why. We have a storm system pulling off from the Pacific Northwest, pulling onto into the Idaho area, which will be moving south to right around the Las Vegas area. In fact, some indicators it might even go a little bit further south than what was originally forecasted. That's the main storm system that's going to be happening over today. That's a trough. Now, there's a couple of impulses which will be moving from that system out northeast. One of them has already moved through the Colorado area. Now, that system, had it have been stronger, the Denver area would have received a northeast wind. There would have been an upslope wind. There would have been heavier precipitation. But that low pressure system was weaker than what was originally forecasted. That means it's weaker by about 2 to 4, maybe even 5 MB. So the pressure was higher. It's not as low. Therefore, that system is not as strong. Therefore, the winds are being primarily controlled by the stronger storm system out on the west in Nevada. That is causing an east wind, although the winds are light out of the east. They have lots of moisture in it coming from the Gulf of Mexico, moving upslope, producing a entrenched environment of moisture in that area. This includes the Denver, Colorado area. And then the main storm system or stronger piece of energy comes in for this afternoon with all of this moisture available. That system brings heavy precipitation rates, which continue through tonight. The colder temperatures start to move into the Denver area this evening. Probably about 10 p.m., the National Weather Service is saying anywhere from 8 to 10 p.m. But some indicators show maybe even after 10 p.m. the rain would change over to snow from the west to the east in Denver. Precipitation would initially be rain with temperatures going up into the mid-40s to even the low 50s in Denver. Other places above 6,000 feet could see an all-snow event even today. But snowfall accumulations probably not more than 3 inches or so, because the main event really happens tonight after midnight, when the snow could fall heavily at times. In fact, at a peak rate of 3 inches an hour. In the hazardous weather outlook, they speak about that, but the hazardous weather outlook from the National Weather Service a lot of times speaks about top potential, and it could happen, maybe will happen, but only for a short period of time. The steady snow will likely fall at a rate of 1 to 2 inches an hour for a large portion of that region. Snowfall accumulations of 2 to 4 feet is what is currently expected. Now, that 48-inch line, that 4 feet, is something that was being talked about yesterday, and it continues to be discussed today, isolated areas of 4 feet. In fact, AccuWeather is talking about 60 inches, 5 feet as an absolute max. The only thing is, however, is that the snow is expected to be a little bit wetter than what was forecasted yesterday. That will likely bring those isolated 48-inch amounts a little bit less, but guidance continues to indicate counties in areas getting more than 40 inches. This is in the mountain area, not for Denver and not for Boulder, Colorado, but areas more into the mountains. That's where you could see, generally speaking, not more than 3 feet, but you could have some areas receiving more than 3 feet. In fact, even more than 40 inches. And again, we have that AccuWeather max at 60. The National Weather Service doesn't talk about anything more than 4 feet. For the Denver, Colorado area, generally like a 10 to 20 inch, but it could be only a 6 to 10 inch snow when you go into the eastern portions of Denver, and especially as you get really even a little bit further east, you end up with only a 1 to 3 inches. There's a very strong cutoff over there, and within just a short distance, you go from 1 inch or even nothing to seeing many, many inches, and even close to a foot. Areas in the western portions of the Denver area could be seeing 18 inches of snow. Tonight, probably just a couple inches of snow, maybe 2 to 4 inches is what is expected over in the Denver area. And then tomorrow, we get these stronger snowfall amounts. It's going to be snowing for a longer period of time, with likely about 4 to 8 inches. Here's the thing with tomorrow. There could be a period of time tomorrow afternoon where it actually stops snowing completely in Denver, but that's possible. There's a possibility that could happen. And then when the snow starts up again in the evening, the snow might be heavier due to a lift that could be happening, tells us the National Weather Service. But, those are some questions. So there's not complete clarity on how much snow will be falling in Denver, and probably a couple more inches for tomorrow night. And then phase 2 of the storm starts up again. This is the second part of the same storm, but part 2 of the storm does not occur over the same area. At least for most places, they won't be getting hit by both, because part 2 covers the four-cornered area in the desert southwest. That's when the snow really gets going for Friday. That's where they're going to see some snow. Now, regarding thunder snow, that's a real possibility for tonight, this evening into tonight. We do have thunderstorm potential in the Denver area and places to the west. And actually along the Interstate 25 corridor, the potential for thunder might even be higher there than other places which are receiving more snow. Now, here's an interesting fact about thunder snow. So the area which gets thunder snow, the University of Missouri tells us that there's an 88% of the time, you have 5.7 inches of snow or more in the place where there was a lightning strike. That was a study done whatever year they did it in the University of Missouri, regardless of what type of storm it is. So, but where you have a lightning strike, the point is there's several more inches of snow that falls in that area. Whereas meteorologist Dave Murray has said, the KTVI chief meteorologist in St. Louis, he has said that when there is thunder and it's snowing, it opens the gates of heaven to the snow. The clouds just totally burst. The snow pours down on the city, and you get several more inches. That's part 1. But the other part, which not so many people know, is that just outside of the thunder snow, you get several inches of less snow. You get less snow. This is why many years ago, around 2009 or so, when maybe a year or two off, when the mayor of Moscow promised that if he's elected, there will be a season with no snow. Well, how did he do it? He hired the Russian military to seed the clouds just outside Moscow. So all of the snow was dumped on that area. This way there would be little to no snow when the clouds hit Moscow. And his plan worked until the middle part of the winter, when Moscow saw a record-breaking snowstorm. I guess they missed, so that's one of the ways these things work. That's what thunder snow does. And therefore, that's also producing a lack of clarity on which areas are going to get heavier snow, which areas are going to see lighter snow. So the other big question, however, and this is really the main question, is the temperatures, borderline temperatures expected over there. So the changeover, it could be off by a few hours, and the changeover is dependent upon the precipitation rates to a large extent, because that produces dynamic cooling. When you have heavy precipitation, it could cause a few degree drop in temperature. It brings the colder air down aloft, down to the surface, which would create a borderline situation, snow instead of rain. That's what we have going on over there. This is a long duration snow event. The Weather Prediction Center is different than the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, but the Weather Prediction Center has all the details on this storm titled Long Duration Snow Event from March 13th all the way through March 16th. But the winter storm warning for Denver goes into effect 9 p.m. tonight and ends Friday, 9 a.m., March 15th. They say that by tonight already, people should only be traveling in case of an emergency and be prepared for anything, and therefore have a survival kit in your car if you must travel. And ski people should stay off of the roads. Tells us the National Weather Service, as exciting as it is to go skiing, but there will be portions of the Interstate 25, the urban portions of the Interstate 25, which travel may become absolutely impossible later on tonight, and there could even be some road closures. So the National Weather Service recommends waiting until Friday before traveling on those roads. Okay, now we have some other things that the National Weather Service recommends, and we go back into the Midwest for this, and that's regarding a risk we did not speak about. We did cover the tornado risk, which is actually the most minimal of all the risks, but there is a tornado risk nonetheless. But we also have a damaging wind risk of wind gusts perhaps up to 65 miles per hour. But the primary risk for severe weather, both today and tomorrow in the Midwest, for today we pointed out it's really portions of Kansas and Missouri, especially northwest Missouri and northeast, east central Kansas, central Kansas as well, but also going south, covering portions of Oklahoma as well. We also have areas just to the south of Iowa. St. Louis would be included in this as well. And then tomorrow, we would also include Peoria, Illinois, perhaps even today to some extent. Is really the large hail of 2 inches in diameter or more. That's really a possibility. That's the primary risk for these areas. If you want to know more information about which areas are in the enhanced risk, the slight risk, the marginal risk, so the Storm Prediction Center has this very comprehensive map, as people might be familiar with. But what's interesting is that Shreveport, Louisiana remains south of all of this. They remain in the thunderstorm risk, but nothing more than that. That's a little bit unusual for them. And Memphis, Tennessee is not even in the thunderstorm risk for today. The other risk is the flash flooding risk, which is also today really centered on the Kansas City area, in that area. But when you get to tomorrow, so again, the thunderstorm development is going to be focused along the warm front for today and tomorrow. That warm front is going to be coming very close to the Chicago area. And the storms with the heavy rain will be occurring along the warm front and even to the north of the warm front. The hail risk will actually extend even to the north of the warm front, tells us the Des Moines, Iowa National Weather Service. So, even if the storms are not severe necessarily, but the hail could be happening even in the environment, which is a little bit less unstable to the north of the front as well. By tomorrow, you have another thing, which is the cold front. The cold front comes by as well, associated with the storm system. And that's when these thunderstorms are expected to develop into a squall line by later on tomorrow evening. Once they develop into a squall line, the tornado potential goes way down. But in the beginning, the St. Louis National Weather Service tells us that the storms will be forming as individual supercells. So in the early development of the storms tomorrow in the late afternoon, that's when the tornado risk is going to be highest. The thunderstorm development is likely to continue the entire night tonight into tomorrow morning, non-stop, heavy rain going over the same areas over and over again. So the flash flooding risk is a real concern for much of Illinois and for much of Missouri, especially as we go into tonight and into tomorrow, and for the Chicago area into tomorrow afternoon, after we've already seen plenty of heavy rain by tomorrow morning already. And again, those thunderstorms will be determining how far north the warm front makes it. For today, we saw very warm temperatures yesterday in Chicago, warm temperatures, but today there will be a lake component to the wind in the Chicago area that will bring some cooler conditions. And the same thing for tomorrow, even a southeast wind. So for Chicago, even any type of easterly component would bring some cooler weather to the immediate Chicago area, and there could even be some pop-up showers, not necessarily thunder, that could develop already this afternoon along the lake front, the lake cold front, a little bit of a cool front. It might develop, it might not develop, and that's the story over here. So, moving right along, I'm sure there's things that have not been covered, but let's move right along. And anyways, so this storm system, basically, it moves to the northeast, and the main trough, the low pressure trough, becomes cut off and just stays kind of stationary in the desert southwest for the next several days. Now, you have a city like Amarillo, Texas, and they are going to be stuck in between a high-pressure ridge over the southeastern portions of the United States, which these high-pressure ridges bring a south-to-southwest flow of warm, humid air into the U.S. The air comes in off the Gulf of Mexico. Well, they are a little bit too far to the west to be receiving the humidity from the Gulf of Mexico, and at the same time, the moist air associated with the low-pressure system over in the desert southwest, they are a little bit too far to the east to be getting the moisture from there. But they'll get a little bit of moisture from there, a little bit of humidity from the Gulf of Mexico, very little. It's going to generally remain dry over there with temperatures in the 50s and 60s in the Amarillo, Texas area over the weekend until that pattern changes when you get into next week. Some say Tuesday, some say Wednesday for that area. Now, but it finally does pull away eventually. But it does pull away from the Pacific Northwest right away, and you have over there unseasonably warm temperatures that develop already by Saturday, even later Friday, but by Saturday, Sunday, and perhaps even Monday, as a high-pressure area brings unseasonable warmth with unusual consistency to a city such as Portland, Oregon, Washington as well, Seattle, Washington, and it's very rare, I don't even know if it's ever happened before, to have 3 consecutive days with highs in the 70s this time of the year. Well, current indications are that this is a very real possibility, and the thinking is Saturday, Sunday, and Monday for those locations. So we have the warmth that's going to be building over there before a cooler weather pattern, wetter weather pattern hits that area for the middle parts of next week. Speaking of cooler weather patterns, so the cooler temperatures come in here in Chicago, all the Midwest, as that storm system departs tomorrow evening, bringing in cooler air Friday, Saturday, but temperatures remain above normal even during that time frame. But another shot of colder air comes in Saturday. It's a dry front. For the most part, it remains dry, but temperatures do drop again. This comes in later Saturday into the Chicago area, and, it's a large front, so it affects the Midwest, eventually making its way to the East Coast. And then we get another front that comes in, bringing even colder air. And current indications are that we could be seeing some snow showers in the Chicago area by Sunday night or Monday, as high temperatures, current guidance shows mid-30s, but forecasters think that the guidance is going to go down. They're forecasting that the guidance is likely going to go down for highs, possibly only the low 30s by Monday. We do have a southern stream storm that will be moving across the U.S., southern states to the East Coast during that time frame, but it's not expected to phase with the colder air. Therefore, the precipitation that falls on Monday will be part of a northern stream that's going to prevent any major winter storms to be taking place in our area during this cold outbreak for the beginning parts of next week. Moving along after that, so we have plenty of discussions about how things are going to warm up. But if we were to focus on the National Weather Service of Duluth, Minnesota, they tell us the following. Now, granted, this is pretty far up north in the upper Midwest, but this is what they tell us, that the second part of March is going to be below normal temperatures, and the second part will have above normal precipitation. That means snow for that final week of March for that area. They're expecting above normal snowfall for the upper Midwest. So something that's important to point out is that the storm track is expected to bring more snow to the upper Midwest during that time, but storm tracks are not always so accurate this far in advance. So to completely rule out Chicago from any snow for the final week of March, I don't see why it would be so wise to do that. Nonetheless, in the Chicago Tribune, in the weather section, which is done by AccuWeather, one of the questions asked to the meteorologist is it safe to put away my snow plow or my snow shovel or whatever exactly how the question was worded? I'm not sure, but is it safe to put it away now? Could we assume there'll be no more snow left? And the answer was it's not safe right now because there are indicators that there could be some snow the beginning part in next week, but after that it is safe to put it away. So I just want to point out that using the approach of the Duluth, Minnesota National Weather Service, although the AccuWeather section of the Chicago Tribune could very well end up being accurate. After all, we are headed into the very end of March, and after all, Duluth, Minnesota is significantly further to the north. But nonetheless, to put an exact line on where the final line of the cold will be is not is never clear this far in advance. Another thing to point out is that if you were to take the top 10 snowstorms ever to hit Chicago, you will see that one of those top 10 snowstorms occurred March 25th into the 26th, and a major snowstorm occurred in the first or second week of April. I believe it was April 8th here in the Chicago area. So we have seen that was a heavy wet snow of 8 or 9 inches. So we have seen some intense stuff happen even the last week of March. So, why put it away if you don't have to put it away? So that will be our final words, unless something else comes to mind. And I wish everybody a wonderful day, and the snow lovers of Denver have what to look forward to. Denver is a city, by the way, that receives its heaviest snow in the beginning of winter and at the end of winter. So this is normal. It's unique. There's not many cities that do that. Most cities receive the most snow in January, midwinter. But in Denver, the storm track goes too far to the south during the midwinter for them to receive snow. So it's the beginning of winter and the end of winter. So they've seen plenty of snow this time of the year, but it's still an exciting thing, especially people living in the western suburbs of Denver. And there's plenty of warm air around. St. Louis temperatures upper 70s, maybe even 80 degrees. The cherry bushes, the Washington Post tells us that the cherry bushes they have a stage 6 stages to blossoming. They're holding on a stage 4, and current expectations are, due to the unseasonably warm temperatures, in the 70s and possibly even hitting 80 degrees by next week. Current indications are they might even fully blossom to a stage 6 by next week, but the Washington Post has a further discussion about that if you want to see more on that topic. I wish everybody a great day. Thank you for listening. This is from the National Weather Service of Denver and Boulder, Colorado. Issued 5:39 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. Key messages: travel may become impossible late tonight through Thursday night for locations in and near the Front Range Mountains and foothills due to major winter storm. 2 to 4 feet expected in some foothill locations. Difficult to nearly impossible travel conditions may develop in portions of the Boulder, western Denver suburbs, Monument Hill corridor due to heavy, wet snowfall. A sharp west to east gradient in snowfall is expected, and therefore there remains more uncertainty with regards to snow amounts in Fort Collins, Greeley, and I-70 east of Denver, including Limon, Limon. Scattered power outages are possible in areas of the Front Range that receive the heavier snowfall amounts. This will be a heavy, wet snow. Snow will taper off Thursday night into Friday morning with gradual improvement in travel conditions once the dig out begins Friday. Localized strong downslope winds west of the Front Range, including eastern Jackson and eastern Grand counties. This is the short-term forecast issued by the National Weather Service for today, Wednesday, and tonight, issued 3:35 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. Satellite shows the first lead shortwave pushing across the Front Range at this time, but slowly that will continue to creep east-northeast into Nebraska. Meanwhile, another shortwave is moving into western Colorado. This one will slow as it gets caught up in the main upper-level trough, closing off and digging southward into the desert southwest. That's the main storm system that will dig almost straight southward from northern Idaho this morning to near Las Vegas by early Thursday morning. While this track is typically not favorable for a big snowstorm, there are other ingredients coming together for a significant March heavy snow event. First, the lead shortwave currently moving across our area is now forecast to be weaker, as mentioned in the previous forecast discussion. This will allow a more easterly component, more upslope, to develop in its wake versus a more northerly component. This disturbance and weak lift has also pre-moistened the environment, with precipitable water values climbing well above normal and at nearly 2 standardized anomalies. That band of higher precipitable water will remain nearly locked in location through tonight, right across the northeast plains. Second, the more elongated mid to upper level trough due to the weaker lead shortwave will allow a stronger and deeper northeasterly upslope flow to develop than what would normally be realized in such a synoptic pattern. There is reasonable agreement that we'll see a period of deep 30-knot upslope develop as we move through the overnight hours and into Thursday morning. It seems odd given the pattern, but even the EC is showing a similar scenario unfold. Third, we're quite unstable with nearly neutral lapse rates through tonight. In fact, we'll even have 100 to 200 joule of median CAPE around this afternoon and early evening for a couple thunderstorms. Therefore, despite the inordinary pattern, we'll likely see the ingredients favorable for sustained upslope and heavy snowfall. One question that remains is how cold it will be, and therefore when will the rain change over to snow. Showers are expected to become more numerous this afternoon as the second shortwave mentioned earlier pushes slowly east into our forecast area. Those will likely intensify and become more widespread this evening as upslope flow develops and strengthens. While temperatures will be relatively mild and mostly rain below 6,000 feet through the day, we do think the combination of heavier precipitation rates and diabatic cooling, along with upslope and weak cold advection from the north, will be able to switch things over to snow across most of the Boulder-Denver corridor between 8 and 10 p.m. this evening. That said, that's if precipitation rates are high enough, which we do expect given the instability. It's a farther east and northeast where there's considerably more uncertainty over the plains and even the northern I-25 corridor around Fort Collins. Even DIA could be on the edge of heavier snowfall or slower transition from rain to snow later this evening and overnight. Therefore, we've kept the winter storm watches in place for the Fort Collins to Greeley to Limon corridor, Limon. More on this in the long-term discussion below. All other highlights are unchanged at this time, and on course. Regarding impacts, it would not be wise to attempt to drive in the foothills or front range mountains starting late this afternoon or evening as heavier precipitation develops. Given the ingredients, we think that 2 to 3 inches per hour snowfall rates would be possible at times. Therefore, rapid deterioration is expected with the onset of heavy snow. The same may be said even for the western Denver suburbs starting around 8 or 9 p.m. or once the changeover occurs, although peak snowfall rates should be closer to 1 to 2 inches per hour given less terrain forcing. What could go wrong in this forecast? Well, the rain to snow changeover being later, intensities lower due to less upslope than models suggest, snow ratios being lower due to heavy wet snowfall, and in parentheses, I admit not perfect dendritic growth regime. We did lower snow ratios from model NBM guidance for this reason, but still ended up with impressive amounts. The deeper moisture shifting farther south, there's been a slight trend over the last 24 hours. Still, our confidence is high for a major winter storm in and near the Front Range mountains and foothills, starting in the mountains and foothills mid to late afternoon, and then in the Denver Boulder areas sometime this evening. This long-duration storm continues through Thursday before letting up Thursday night. More on that below. Finally, we expect locally strong downslope winds on the lee side, the west side of the Front Range. That's due to the relatively strong easterly component, 30 to 35 knots, and a mean state critical layer. We're not entirely sure how this unfolds given the rarity of event, but some potential for strong east winds making their way down to Fraser and Grand Lake. We've adjusted the forecast winds in those areas to account for this potential of gusts to 40 to 60 miles per hour. Here's the long-term forecast discussion, Thursday through Tuesday. Denver, Colorado, Boulder, Colorado National Weather Service, issued 3:35 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. We're going to read the main part we're going to read is regarding winter storm. On Thursday, the closed upper low will be centered near southern Nevada at 12 Zulu, with deep and moist northeast upslope flow from the surface to around 500 MB. The models show a period of light to mid-upper level QG ascent through the day. The European computer model and the GFS model shows a persistent northeasterly upslope flow of 25 to 30 knots through 0 Zulu Friday, as the closed low remains nearly stationary. Moist adiabatic lapse rates will prevail Thursday with the best instability from the surface to 700 MB. The upslope appears get disrupted AOA 700 MB as a shortwave trough passes out of Montana into the upper Midwest Thursday evening. However, below 700 MB, a weaker northeasterly upslope component will continue along the Front Range. Overall, the snow then intensity of snowfall is expected to decrease Thursday night into Friday morning. Looking at the QPF snow amounts, the models continue to hammer areas in and near Front Range mountains, the foothills as well, and the Palmer Divide, Thursday into Thursday night. The models still generate storm totals in excess of 40 inches in some areas. Overall, the higher QPF amounts across northeast Colorado have been trending more towards the west and south, so the QPF is a little lower over the northeast plains. There are still questions as well regarding how much snow will occur in zones 38 and 43, where some decent northeast downslope winds off the Cheyenne Ridge are expected. For zones 45 and 46, confidence in the warning for these zones is higher verse 38 and 43. Strong winds over the Palmer Divide, in particular, may be flirting with borderline blizzard criteria at times on Thursday. It's unusual to see an amplified mountain wave and mean state critical layer set up with downslope winds from east to west over the mountains, but that appears to be the case. Gusty northeast winds in the 50 to 60 mile per hour range will likely occur on the exposed west-facing slopes of the Continental Divide through midday Thursday. Then the waves should start to weaken in the afternoon. By Friday, the closed low will still be over the desert southwest with a deformation axis of 500 MB oriented from the southeast to northwest across Colorado. Northeast Colorado will remain under the dry and subsident side of the deformation zone, parked over Colorado. The closed low is then forecasted to remain parked in that region over the weekend as an omega ridge builds into British Columbia on Saturday. As it does, northern Colorado will be under an increasing northerly flow as an upper-level jet passes across the northern plains and into the upper Midwest. This energy will be rotating around a long-wave trough over the Great Lakes region. There may be some light snow showers in the mountains over the weekend, but the plains should remain dry with just a gradual warming trend expected. By early next week, a mean ridge will be over the west. The closed low over the desert southwest finally weakens and washes out across Colorado by midweek. High temperatures will finally make it back into the mid-50s on Monday and into the 60s for Tuesday and Wednesday. That's, again, for the Denver, Boulder, Colorado County warning area. The following is from the Weather Prediction Center, updated 3 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, March 13th, 2024. These are the key messages for the March 13th through March 16th winter storm. A significant and long-duration winter storm to bring heavy snow, major impacts likely. A winter storm will develop across the central Rockies today, spreading heavy snow across the area through Friday, with snow expanding into the southern Rockies beginning Thursday. A second round of heavy snow will develop over the Four Corners late Thursday and persist into the weekend. Heavy snow across the central and southern Rockies. Snow will develop across the central Rockies tonight, becoming heavy with snowfall rates exceeding 2 inches an hour possible. The chances of that happening are between 40 to 60%. Snowfall rates of 2 inches an hour possible in the Front Range tonight and Thursday. This will likely, there's a higher than 90% chance, this will likely produce more than 1 foot of snow across much of the Front Range. Again, there's a higher than 90% chance of more than 1 foot of snow across much of the Front Range, the foothills, Sangre de Cristos, and San Juans. Locally, 2 to 4 feet of snow is possible. The combination of heavy snow rates and gusty winds exceeding 35 miles per hour will cause blowing snow and severely restricted visibility, especially along the I-25 urban corridor and other mountain roads in the region. Travel will be difficult and at times could be impossible. Road closures are possible. Some disruptions to infrastructure due to power outages are also possible. The second phase of the winter storm will be for the Four Corners. Beginning Thursday night, waves of heavy snow will impact the terrain areas north of the Mogollon Rim and northeast towards the San Juans and southern Colorado Rockies. Snow probabilities for 12 inches are high, higher than 70% chance. Localized totals above 2 feet are possible. From the Weather Prediction Center, a warm front will lift north. For today, a warm front will lift north into the Midwest today into tonight. Thunderstorms, some severe, will develop ahead of the front, and strong and/or training storms may cause flash flooding. The highest flash flood risk is in northeastern Kansas. We have a slight chance for a tornado occurring. This is a 5% chance for a tornado occurring within a 25-mile radius. The only major city I see here is Kansas City, but it does cover an area in Kansas along with other areas in Missouri. And we also have a marginal risk for tornadoes covering a much larger area, and that does include St. Louis, Missouri, that includes Hannibal, Missouri, Jefferson City, Missouri, that includes Wichita, Kansas, that includes Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Norman. But when you get to the severe weather in general, you have Peoria, Illinois, which is included in a marginal risk for severe weather, including Omaha, Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, just to the south of Des Moines, Iowa, Dallas, Texas, Springfield, Missouri, Jefferson City, Missouri, and a slight risk for severe weather for places like St. Louis, Missouri, actually Jefferson City, Missouri, The enhanced risk is Kansas City, Missouri, Overland Park, Kansas, Kansas City, Kansas, Topeka, Kansas, and Olathe, Kansas, Olathe. The slight risk is for St. Louis, Missouri, Columbia, Missouri, St. Charles, Missouri, St. Peters, Missouri, Florissant, Missouri. Marginal risk is Dallas, Texas, Fort Worth, Texas, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Omaha, Nebraska, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. The enhanced risk of severe thunderstorms across northeast Kansas and northwest Missouri. This was written at 11:46 a.m., March 13th, 2024, Wednesday. Large to very large hail, severe thunderstorms, wind gusts, and a few tornadoes are expected this afternoon into the evening across parts of the central plains and lower Missouri Valley. Isolated severe storms may also occur late this afternoon across parts of the southern plains. For the central plains and the lower Missouri, that's the summary. So again, large to very large hail, severe thunderstorm wind gusts, and a few tornadoes are expected this afternoon into the evening across parts of the central plains and lower Missouri Valley. Isolated severe storms may also occur late this afternoon across parts of the southern plains. So the central plains and the lower Missouri Valley is where the stuff is expected. And for that area, a lead shortwave trough and upper jet exit region will approach the region this evening with an evolving northeast shifting triple point related to dual transitionary surface waves near and north of the dry line and along a southwest to northeast oriented Barcelinic zone. Low-level moisture will continue to steadily increase with dew points in the 50s into the region, but tend to be a limiting factor for a more consequential tornado risk while still supporting an appreciable potential for large hail. Initial thunderstorm development, at least on isolated to widely scattered basis, will likely begin by late afternoon, roughly 22 to 23 Zulu. I believe that means 5 to 6 o'clock p.m., but I might be an hour off on that. Probably a bit earlier than some short-term guidance depictions. This development will likely include the surface low triple point vicinity across west central into northern Kansas, and potentially as far east as central to east central Missouri in vicinity of the warm front. And that's why St. Louis, Missouri is included in a tornado risk. Supercells with all severe hazards are possible, including at least a few tornadoes and significant 2-inch hail or more than 2 inches. It still appears the greatest concentration of severe risk will be across northeast Kansas into northwestern Missouri within the enhanced risk, but eastward increased risk adjustments have otherwise been made across eastern Missouri. While large hail will be the most common severe risk regionally, tornado potential will be maximized with discrete or semi-discrete storms late this afternoon and early this evening near the surface low triple point vicinity before boundary layer CINH increases later in the evening. Damaging wind potential could also increase for a time this evening, especially if storm cluster into or across northern Missouri. Now we go into the southern plains, including Oklahoma, southern Kansas, and north Texas, so the severe weather risk is a little bit less. Seasonably hot temperatures and strong mixing will occur near and behind the north to south extensive dry line today. As boundary layer moisture otherwise increases, dew points are a little bit higher there, into the low 60s within the warm moist sector east of the dry line. Implications from observational trends in addition to short-term guidance suggests near dry line confluence will be lacking, even while mid-level capping should be prevalent. Isolated attempts for deep convective initiation are plausible late this afternoon, especially with northward extent across the Oklahoma southern Kansas portion of the dry line, where mid-level cooling and somewhat greater confluence may exist. If and where any storms can't sustain moderate buoyancy, steep lapse rate environment, and supercell favorable hotographs, The 45 knots or more effective shear would support a severe storm or supercell risk with large hail and possibly some tornado potential, albeit with modest boundary layer moisture. However, as previously indicated, any such potential is still expected to remain very isolated and uncertain regionally. This was issued 12:59 a.m. Central Daylight Time, Wednesday, March 13th. From the Storm Prediction Center of Norman, Oklahoma. There's an enhanced risk of severe thunderstorms from southeast Oklahoma into western Arkansas and far southwest Missouri for tomorrow, Thursday, March 14th. Here's the summary. Strong to severe thunderstorms are possible across a large area from the middle Mississippi Valley into eastern Oklahoma, including East Texas, and the lower Mississippi Valley on Thursday. Greatest threat is currently expected to be from the southeast Oklahoma into western Arkansas. The synopsis is a surface low is forecast to be over the Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri border intersection vicinity early Thursday morning. A cold front will extend from this low southwestward through southeast Kansas and central Oklahoma into the Texas Hill Country. A warm front will extend from this low northeastward through central Illinois. A broad warm sector will exist ahead of the cold front Thursday morning, characterized by dew points ranging from the mid to upper 60s over East Texas to the mid 50s near the Iowa-Missouri border. This reservoir of low-level moisture will exist beneath steep mid-level lapse rates, resulting in moderate to strong buoyancy as heating destabilizes the air mass. As such, thunderstorms are anticipated across much of the warm sector as the cold front gradually shifts eastward throughout the day. Some strong to severe storms are possible, particularly in the corridor from northern Missouri into Arkansas. The mid-Missouri Valley, Thursday morning into late afternoon and early evening. Showers and thunderstorms will likely be ongoing near the surface low and warm front early Thursday morning. General expectation is for most of this activity to be north of the warm front, with an attendant threat for isolated hail. However, there is some potential for the southern edge of these storms and associated outflow to move within the far northern corridor of the warm sector, resulting in some threat for damaging gusts as well as hail. This activity is expected to continue eastward, reaching the middle Ohio Valley by the afternoon. The presence of these early morning storms could act to shift the position of the entire frontal zone southward, with an attendant shift of the afternoon severe threat as well. Additionally, if strong outflow is realized, the resulting boundary could act as a focus for afternoon development across Missouri. Evolution of these mesoscale details varies within the guidance, but the more favorable area for afternoon development does appear to be over central Missouri, which is further south than forecasted yesterday when the area just south of the warm front looked more plausible. Given steep mid-level lapse rates and strong deep layer vertical shear, large to very large hail is still anticipated with the initial more cellular late afternoon storm. Strong downdrafts are possible as well, with potential for upscale growth into one or more Boeing clusters. Veered low-level flow is forecast to limit the tornado potential, although interaction with any boundaries could lead to mesoscale corridors of slightly greater tornado threat. For the middle Ohio Valley during the afternoon and evening, as the activity initially over the mid-Missouri Valley continues eastward, there is some potential it transitions from elevated to surface-based, or at least near surface-based, as it interacts with the warm front progressing northward across the region. Buoyancy will be modest, but moderate southerly low-level flow beneath strong westerlies will result in vertically veering low-level hodographs that could support updraft organization and even a few tornadoes. Uncertainties regarding the position of the front as well as how the convection evolves out of the mid-Missouri Valley limit forecasts confidence with this outlook, but future guidance will be evaluated closely and upgrades may be considered in later outlooks. For the far northeast Texas and eastern Oklahoma into Arkansas during the afternoon and evening, large-scale forcing for ascent will be nebulous over the region, with some guidance even showing height rises during the afternoon. Even so, weak surface troughing is expected to interact with an increasingly unstable air mass across the region during the afternoon, resulting scattered thunderstorms from far northeast Texas into eastern Oklahoma and western Arkansas between 18 Zulu and 21 Zulu. Given robust buoyancy and moderate vertical shear, initial development will likely be supercellular and capable of all severe hazards, including very large hail. Low-level southerly flow, perhaps even southeasterly, is also anticipated, resulting in low-level hodographs that support tornadogenesis, particularly from far southeast Oklahoma into western Arkansas. Even with favorable hodograph, storm interactions could prevent the discreteness needed for updraft organization. For the mid-Missouri Valley into the mid-south during evening and overnight, after the initial development described above, some upscale growth into one or more clusters appears plausible, with an attendant threat for damaging gusts as these clusters move eastward. Buoyancy will gradually decrease with eastward extent, leading to the expectation that whatever line segments do develop will lose intensity as they continue eastward overnight. For the tornado risk for tomorrow, Chicago, Illinois is in a tornado risk at 2%, which is a marginal risk for tornadoes, 2% within a 25-mile radius. Fort Wayne, Indiana, Chicago, Illinois, Dallas, Texas, Detroit, Michigan, Columbus, Ohio, and Fort Worth, Texas are some larger population centers which are in the risk area. For the 5% tornado risk within a 25-mile radius, includes Fort Smith, Arkansas, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Springdale, Arkansas, Paris, Texas, and Russellville, Arkansas. We're just going to read about the fire weather outlook. National Weather Service Storm Prediction Center, Norman, Oklahoma, issued 10:03 a.m. Central Daylight Time, Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. Extremely critical fire weather area for the Texas Panhandle into western Oklahoma. Critical fire weather area for the southern High Plains. Wildfire outbreak possible. Relative humidity has already dropped into the teens to lower 20s across much of the southern High Plains, with winds around 15 miles per hour. Winds will increase rapidly over the next few hours as the boundary layer deepens, with sustained winds of 25 to 30 miles per hour by early afternoon. The most extreme conditions are expected between 20 Zulu and 23 Zulu, when mixing will be deepest and mid-level flow overspreading the region. Any wildfires which form are likely to spread rapidly in dense, critically dry, fine fuels with high resistance to control. Here's the previous discussion, issued 12:51 a.m. Central Daylight Time, Wednesday, March 13th. Wildfire outbreak possible. Synopsis. A belt of enhanced westerly mid-level flow will overspread the Rocky Mountains and the southern to central plains today. Lee cyclogenesis will occur across the central High Plains with a surface dry line extending from central Texas southward into western and central Texas. Extremely critical fire weather is expected across the Texas Panhandle into western Oklahoma. A broader area of elevated to critical fire weather will encompass much of the southern High Plains. For the Texas Panhandle into western Oklahoma, extremely critical. An extremely critical fire area was maintained with this outlook across the Texas Panhandle into western Oklahoma. Within this region, the strongest mid-level flow will overspread a deeply mixed atmosphere Wednesday afternoon. As a result, sustained winds of 30 miles per hour are expected, with gusts more than 50 miles per hour, with relative humidity dropping into the single digits. Extensive fuel loading is present in the region and will support large fire spread. In addition, the latest fuel guidance indicates fuels have dried even further since the wildfire outbreak at the end of February, with daily ERC values likely above the 95th percentile for the date by tomorrow afternoon. For the southern High Plains, a critical fire weather hazard. Critical fire weather conditions are expected across much of the southern High Plains, where relative humidity reductions to 10 to 15% will overlap sustained winds of 20 to 25, locally as high as 30 miles per hour. Fuels within this region are critically dry, with ERCs around the 60th to 75th percentile, and will support increase in wildfire spread. Fuel loading is not as extensive in these regions. As such, a critical was maintained with this outlook as confidence in widespread extremely critical conditions is low. You've been listening to Weather with Enthusiasm. This podcast can be found on almost every platform where podcasts are available.